Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Today I'm going to be going over reasons for why you should get a leopard gecko and why a leopard gecko could make a great pet for you. So let's begin the video. So to begin with, leopard geckos are very straightforward. They're so easy to care for, especially if you're a beginner. You can't really go wrong, which leads me on to the fact that they're very hardy as a species, and on top of that they're very forgiving when things are done incorrectly. So if you're going to make mistakes, your leopard gecko isn't going to die, which make them a very straightforward pet to care for. On top of that, they're very low maintenance, which means that you don't really need to do much for your leopard gecko. Once the enclosure is set up with all the correct heating and lighting, there's not much maintenance to be done other than sort of cleaning the glass like I'm doing here. And then on top of that, you're going to obviously have to clean their poo, which they tend to do in one corner of the enclosure, which is another great thing because you kind of always know where the poo's going to be. Another thing that you would have to do for the maintenance is obviously disinfect all of the different hides and fake plants that you have inside the enclosure, and I tend to recommend to people to do this once a month. Just remove the items, give them a good deep clean, and obviously you'll have to feed your leopard gecko, which is also partly maintenance, but their diet is so straightforward, especially compared to other reptile species. That's another thing, leopard geckos don't really cost much, to feed, but also to actually keep up and running each month for the heating and lighting bills. They're so inexpensive that they really are quite a low cost efficient pet, which makes them a great option for those who want a pet but don't have a lot of money. Another great thing about leopard geckos is the fact that they are very calm and docile. They're definitely a lot calmer than something like a crested gecko, for example, because crested geckos tend to jump quite a bit when they're handling, but with leopard geckos they're very tolerant to handling. Now leopard geckos, they rarely bite, but obviously this can happen. I do find that the calmer you are with your pet leopard gecko, the calmer they are going to also be, and the less likely that you're going to get bitten by it. Usually if you get bitten by a leopard gecko, you've either accidentally hurt it or stressed it out. But yeah, honestly, leopard geckos, they're so calm and so docile, which makes them a really lovely pet to own. On top of this, they have such unique personalities, and they have their own little characteristics to them. Each and every gecko has its own quirks and its own little behaviours. They truly are kind of unique from gecko to gecko, but on top of that, they just have such cute eyes and are always smiling, which is just so damn adorable. But genuinely, they are great pets to be able to actually interact with. Another really cool thing about leopard geckos is the fact that there's such a wide variety of different sort of colours, or morphs should we say. There really is a gecko out there for everyone, depending on what you specifically like the look of. And to be honest with you, all of their morphs are just so beautiful in general. No matter what morph leopard gecko you get, it's always going to be vibrant in colour. Another great thing that I'd say about leopard geckos is the fact that they live for around 15 to 20 years in captivity. So therefore they're less of a commitment in comparison to something like a tortoise that lives well over 100 years. A tortoise would be a lifelong commitment, but with a leopard gecko, yes, 15 to 20 years is still quite some time, but it's not a lifelong commitment, which makes the leopard gecko great for people who want a pet but don't want it for a lifetime. Another great thing about leopard geckos too is the fact that they're quite quiet and also odorless. If you've ever kept a bearded dragon, for example, you'll probably know what I mean when I say that their poo really smells. With a leopard gecko, you're not really going to have this problem, and like I say, that they usually poop in one corner of the enclosure, so it makes it very easy to clean this up. But also, unlike bearded dragons, leopard gecko poos don't really smell at all, which makes them a great option for those living in apartments or shared accommodation, because it's not going to be stinking your house out. When I used to own a bearded dragon, I used to come home from work, and the minute I opened the front door, I could tell you if he's had a poop or not, because it would just genuinely smell so strong. So yeah, that definitely makes them a great pet, especially if you're looking for something that's not going to be smelly. And since we've mentioned about small apartments, genuinely these guys are perfect for if you live in like a flat or something, or if you rent just a small room. These guys don't take up much space whatsoever. You know, the minimum adult size enclosure is a 3 by 1.5 foot enclosure, so therefore it makes a great option for those without a lot of space available. Another great thing about leopard geckos is, for example, if you're anything like me and you're allergic to things like cats and dogs because of the fur, you won't have this problem with a leopard gecko. I can promise you that your allergies won't be getting set off 24/7 because of fur. Obviously, leopard geckos don't have fur at all, but genuinely, I've never had any sort of allergic reaction to any of my reptiles, and that's not just leopard geckos. just reptiles in general. So genuinely, if you are allergic to things like cats and dogs, I'd highly recommend any reptile really, especially if you genuinely are looking for a pet. I can tell you firsthand that your allergies will not be set off by them. Now, leopard geckos don't need too big of an enclosure, and this is because they're quite a small gecko. Most leopard geckos get to around 7 to 10 inches in length, which makes them a really handleable size. But also it's great for those who aren't looking for something like too big, like a bearded dragon or like a monitor lizard or something, or even just like a big snake. These guys only get to roughly about this sort of size, and their size is a very manageable size. Another really cool thing about leopard geckos, because they're insectivores, you're going to always have the fun of feeding the insects to your pet leopard gecko. This in itself is really fun to do, and it's great because not only are you interacting with your pet leopard gecko, you're also observing them hunt, and these guys are genuinely really fascinating to watch hunt. And in fact, that's also another thing, they're quite curious of a species, but also they're quite adventurous. Oh, and also with a leopard gecko, you won't have to like mist down their enclosure, unlike something like a crested gecko, for example. You don't really need to worry much about humidity with these guys. That's also a weight off your shoulder, especially if you've never kept reptiles before. Like I say, you won't need to mist their enclosure. Their humidity is usually between 30 to 40%, which makes them even easier to keep as a pet. But also on top of that, they're really good for those who want to be able to bond with an animal. You will be able to bond with your leopard gecko. It might not happen straight away, but over time, once your leopard gecko learns to trust you and realizes that you're not a threat at all, they're going to warm up to you, and you will genuinely build a connection with your pet leopard gecko. But also leopard geckos, they're not very destructive. Unlike something like my tegu that will literally just wreck everything and everything. Leopard geckos, they don't really do anything like that. They're not ripping apart backgrounds, and they're not ripping apart their like hides and stuff. Like I said earlier, they're really calm and gentle, but you won't have to be constantly replacing things like the backgrounds. I find with like bearded dragons, I have several customers that go through like 3 or 4 backgrounds in a year because their bearded dragons have scratched at the background, and therefore they've had to replace it. But with leopard geckos, you're not really going to have this problem whatsoever. And on top of all of this, leopard geckos are quite adaptable. For example, you can keep them in a really bog standard enclosure setup, or you can go fully in and go bioactive with them. But whatever you decide to do, they're not really going to be bothered by it, and they will interact with everything that you give them the opportunity to interact with. Genuinely, they're just so fascinating to actually observe. But also, if you're looking for something that you don't have to spend every single day with, or give every single minute of your attention to, unlike something like a dog, for example, you could leave your leopard gecko alone for a couple of days and it's going to be perfectly fine without any repercussions, which makes them great for those who want a pet but don't have a lot of time on their hands. And when you do have the time, you'd be able to get your gecko out and actually sit and interact with it. But they're just genuinely not as demanding as other reptile species. For example, like my tegu, he's quite demanding. But genuinely, all round, I feel like leopard geckos make extremely good pets, especially if you've never kept any reptiles before. I'd highly recommend starting off with a leopard gecko because they genuinely are one of the easiest pet reptiles to actually care for. So if this isn't enough to convince you on why a pet leopard gecko might make a great option as a pet for you, then maybe a leopard gecko isn't the best option for you. But if all of the reasons that I've just gone over really fit well with your specific living scenarios and what you genuinely want from a reptile, then genuinely I would highly recommend a leopard gecko as a pet. Now, if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to drop us a comment and I'll make sure to get back to you. And if you can think of other reasons for why leopard geckos make great pets, then drop them down in the comments section, because I'm sure other people who are looking into getting a pet leopard gecko would be quite interested to see what other people would say for why they make a great pet. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Drop us a like if you did to let me know that you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and also follow us on social media. That's it for today, folks. I shall see you in the next video. See ya!